recording.
Good morning, everybody. I am Claude Banks.
And I am Bonnie West.
And we are
Claude and Bonnie in the morning.
Today we'll be giving you an exclusive look on the whole house restoration. We will be discussing two prominent women who have made this possible, Julia Lathrop and Kathleen Lindrup. First, we will be discussing Julia Lathrop. Bonnie?
Julia Lathrop was otherwise known as America's first official mother. She was crucial to the child welfare system as we know it today. She was born in Rockford, Illinois on June 29, 1858. She was born to William and Sarah Adeline Lathrop. William Lathrop might sound familiar because he was a Republican politician as well as avid abolitionist of women's rights, as well as her mother Sarah, who was also a women's rights suffragette. And until Julia left for college in 1876, she helped raise her younger siblings. She was the oldest of 5, so big family. And like her mother, she decided to attend the Rockford Female Seminary, where she was only there for a year before she transferred to Vassar College, where she eventually received her degree in 1880. It was after she completed college that she returned home and worked for her father as his secretary. And that is whenever Julia became interested in law, after reading some of his books. So, Claude, why don't you tell us more about just exactly where Julia came from and just more of her background.
Sure. According to research, Julia attended the event at her alma mater, the Rockford Female Seminary, where she listened to both Jane Addams and Ellen Gates Starr present information about the creation and purpose of Hull House.
Wait, the Jane Addams?
The Jane Addams. The
Jane Addams.
After hearing their speech, Julia decided to join their efforts and move to Chicago in 1890. She became the first resident of Hull House to receive a state position appointed by the governor to the Illinois Board of Charities. It was during this time that Julia developed her reputation for traveling and visiting facilities that house the disabled, mentally ill, elderly, or sick. She advocated for numerous groups and was known for her enormous heart for the neglected members of society.
Who exactly are these neglected members of society, according to Julia?
Well, we're talking about the mentally ill, the elderly, and the sick, and the infant mortality rate.
Oh, okay, so she was just more interested in the neglected, as in the forgotten people, children, the mentally ill, just forgotten and not really taken care of.
Exactly.
Okay. After these short messages, stay tuned and we will present more about the Whole House Restoration Project and more about the history behind the Children's Bureau and the Whole House's residents.
Oh God, what a quiet place. If you need a place to study, and it's quiet, and nobody's bothering you, come to the Tech Library, open 24/5.
Thank you for tuning back with us here at Fox News. I am here now with Hope De La Garza, who is our special guest today. She is actually a Harvard graduate and is very familiar with Kathleen Lindrup and the work that she did. And so, Hope, tell us a little bit about yourself. What sparked your interest in Kathleen?
Well, it started when I was little. I went to the Hull House to visit with my parents, and I just saw how much the kids loved being there and how they were affected, and I just thought, wow, what a great opportunity. I wish I could do that. And so that's when I started going to school. I recently graduated in 2010, and so then I just started studying more about her. I just wanted to know where she was from, how she got her start.
Great. So tell us about
She was involved in the child welfare. She was born March the 8th, 1891 in Wisconsin to Clara and Irving Linroot. Her father was a political figure. He was elected into the Senate and to the House of Representatives. His involvement actually compelled her to go to college and study in economics and minor in sociology at the University of Wisconsin in Madison.
Okay, Hope, correct me if I'm wrong. You said that her father was also a political figure.
Yes.
That is awfully similar to Julia and Julia's background in it. She was inspired by her father also in his work with women's rights and equity. That's interesting.
Yes, they're very similar in many ways. Later on, during her time at the University of Wisconsin, she prepared a brief and testified before the Legislation Committee of Wisconsin in support of the minimum wage legislation. At that time, there was no such laws in the United States, which, if you think about it, is really hard to believe. Right now, we're currently fighting to get our minimum wage raised to $10.10. Right now, it's only $7.25, which most people can't really make a decent living off of. So for them not to have any minimum wages is really hard to believe.
And so they were fighting for things that we are fighting for today still.
Very,
Wow,
very correct. Later on, in 1913, she became the Deputy of Industrial Commission of Wisconsin. She spent her time serving the living costs in relationship to the state's minimum wage, which had began at that time. She was there for a year before she joined the U.S. Children's Bureau in Washington, D.C. in 1914.
This introduced her to the whole house.
Yes,
and
exactly.
the entire establishment. Okay.
Like Julia, Catherine was also interested in juvenile courts, as well as the relationship between mothers and their children. In 1921, Catherine Linroot became the Chief of Editorial Division of the Children's Bureau.
So you were saying that you were explaining Catherine and her major accomplishments. Can you expand on that for the audience, please?
Sure. Catherine was one of the chiefs of the editorial division of the Children's Bureau. She was also the assistant chief of the bureau. She served under Grace Abbott, which y'all may know as one of the major contributors in advancing child welfare issues. Later, she accepted her position as the third president of the Federal Children's Bureau. Her work did not just consist of just child welfare issues. She was also the president of the National Conference of Social Work in 1935. She was very crucial in the addition of Title IV. Title IV is the Aid to Dependent Children Act and to the Social Security Act of 1935.
So as I understand it, it was this act that allowed the Children's Bureau to actually give money to the disabled or the mentally ill, sick, whoever fit that category. And so she actually created programs for soldiers and for the wives of soldiers and the children for those soldiers. And some of these programs included, she also was a part of the provisions that went with the Fair Labor Standards Act. So she was very concerned with child labor laws and the amount of work that a child has to do and the ages and the minimum wage requirements and everything like that. She also, apparently, she created the National Commission on Children in Wartime, and so also has to do with veterans and soldiers. She also created the United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund in December of 1946. That is all just to say that she just did not do work just here nationally. She also did work internationally with the United Nations. And she served as a secretary of that organization, and her job was to establish a new organization within the United Nations that specialized in child welfare, because as I understand it, they did not exist prior to her.
Well, although Catherine was very involved in many organizations throughout her lifetime, she did keep her priorities straight. She was known for her many contributions to social work and her incredible works in ethics. She advocated for the rights of illegitimate children and published several papers informing the public of her research. She is most known for her involvement in the Major Organizations Conference of Social Work in 1935.
It was there that she served as a secretary, and her job was to establish a new organization within the United Nations that specialized in child welfare, because as I understand it, there were no programs established at that time within the United Nations.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Tell us more about Catherine and anything that you would like to add just about.
Okay, well, Catherine was involved in many organizations. Though she had so many organizations, she did keep her priorities in order. She was known for her contributions to social work and her incredible work ethic. She advocated for the rights of illegitimate children and published several papers informing the public of her research. She was known for her involvement in 3 major organizations. She was the president of the National Conference of Social Work in 1935. She worked as a secretary of the White House Conference on Children and Democracy in 1940. And she worked as a secretary of the United Nations Temporary Social Commission in 1946.
So we talked about Julia Lathrop before you came on, and one of the major things Julia focused on were the neglected members of society. Here you said that Catherine called them illegitimate children. Can we assume that they mean the same thing?
I think so. I think the illegitimate children and the people that needed help were both could be considered the same because they were in the same situation.
And she advocated for the same groups, juveniles and children and women's rights, just like Julia. And so we're gonna finish up here because we have Joshua Sports next. But we do want to leave you with the famous words of Catherine Linroot. She says, "We are prodigal in our dreams for children, but often miserly in our deeds." Thank you, and we hope you